Welcome to a new FanHome Iron Man review of the 9th subscription box. I am Anthony Scott at toyhypeusa.com. Inside this box is issues 31, 32, 33, and 34. Included with each one of these magazines are additional parts to continue the build for Iron Man. So if you missed any of the first 8 unboxings and review, check out our YouTube channel and on toyhypeusa.com. Big shout out and thank you to our friends at FanHome for sending along for review. Greatly appreciate that. If you're looking to subscribe, you'll find links in the YouTube description or in the written review on toyhypeusa.com. Here's a look at issue 32. You may notice that the bag has been opened. I made a little boo-boo when opening number 31. I opened the wrong bag. So here's a look at the parts that are included. Inside this issue, we have the history of Iron Man, the mask of the Iron Man, Mark III armor, the left knee joint, which are the parts we're going to be using for assembly. Inside the comics, Black Widow, from rivals to allies, and the armor, anti-radiation, 2 geniuses, 1 armor. Kicking off, first article here, the mask of the Iron Man. And we have a continuation of that, along with some really good images. Halfway through, we have a look at all the parts that are included and step-by-step instructions. So here's your closer look at all the parts. This is where it's going to go. Left knee joint. Here's a look at the instructions. Really take your time when assembling. And finally, there's a look at the completed steps. So we're going to be using parts from issue 31 and 32 to finish this assembly. Here's a look at the exploded view. Give you a better idea where all the parts go. This is actually very helpful when assembling. Next article is all about Black Widow. And we have a continuation. Next up, anti-radiation, 2 geniuses, 1 armor. And finally, the back of this magazine is a look at Iron Man Volume 3, issue number 26 from March 2000. And we have a look at next issue. So what I'm going to do now is work on assembly, and let's take a closer look. Here's a look at the completed assembly of the left knee joint. As you can see, it's all attached here. Very nicely done. Most of this is die cast, which you can see. I had to do this actually twice because the first time I couldn't get it to close properly. And the final step here would just be screwing these 2 in and putting the cap on this side, which you see here. This part here can also move, so just make sure to line up the gears properly, follow the instructions carefully. And now I am moving on to issue number 33. Up next, issue 33, and here's a look at the cover, as well as a look at the parts that are included, which we're going to be taking a closer look at. But first, let's take a look at the magazine. So, as always, you have the table of content on the left here. The following articles are the history of Iron Man, Bad Blood, or Change of Character, step-by-step instructions, which continues the build for Iron Man, Mark III armor, the left hip. Inside the comics, we have Whiplash, the whip and its bearers. And finally, we have the armor, high gravity armor, very heavy metal. First article, Bad Blood, a change of character. And we have a continuation of that. About halfway through, we have a look at the step-by-step instructions to continue the build. And let's take a closer look. So these are the parts in the bag. And this is where everything is going to go. And here's a look at the instructions. Here's a look at the exploded view, which is always very helpful. And now we have a continuation with a new article of Whiplash, classic Iron Man villain. And here's a continuation of that article. And finally, the last article, high gravity armor, very heavy metal. And here's a look at the back of this magazine. Inside, you have Iron Man Bad Blood #1 from September 2000. And you have a look at the next issue, which is number 34. So what I'm going to do now is work on assembly, and let's take a closer look. Here's a look at the completed assembly. You're going to be screwing in a couple of pieces on both sides of the left hip joint. This is the first one, where my finger's pointing, and you see the black screw there. This is the second one, no screw. You're just going to be inserting this in. And here is the final step. You're going to be attaching these two pieces together, putting a screw in. And that's it for assembly for now. Both these pieces are made of plastic. They're not die cast, but they do have that same great metallic deco right there on the back. And I am now moving to the final issue, which is 34. Up next, issue 34. And here's a look at the magazine, as well as the parts that are included for this build. You'll see that there's additional screws in there. There's a look at the back. So inside this magazine, as always, we have the table of contents on the left, including the history of Iron Man, maximum security space prison, step by step, which is the instructions for the build. We have the left thigh. Inside the comics, we have Ultimate Universe, Marvel in the New Century. And finally, we have the armor, hypervelocity, one step further. First article, maximum security, space prison. You see members of the Shi'ar Empire and Avengers in these images. And a continuation, Ronin there. So halfway through, we have a look at the step-by-step instructions, and we have a look at the parts that are included here. Let's take a closer look. This is where it's going to go. Make sure to follow these steps very carefully. And this is the final step for now. Here's a look at the exploded view. Next article, Ultimate Universe, Marvel in the New Century. If you remember the early 2000s, they kind of like rebooted and they introduced a new Ultimate issues, new characters, alternate worlds, things like that. Here's a continuation. It was a whole reinventing thing. And finally, we have Hypervelocity, one step further. And here's a look at the back. This includes a look at the issue, Iron Man Volume 3, issue number 35 from December 2000, along with additional information there. And we have a look at the next issue, which was number 35. So what I'm going to do now is work on assembly, and let's take a closer look. Here we have a look at the completed assembly. As you see, it matches the image on the right there. Here's a look at the bottom. So basically, you're going to be attaching 3 pieces using a total of 5 black screws, which you see inside here. The third piece is right here on top, attached to this piece. As you can see, the red's a little bit different. This one's more metallic red. This one's a bit more of a duller red. Overall, great build so far. I also want to point out all 3 of these pieces are made of plastic. So, hope you guys are enjoying the build as much as I am. Big shout out and thank you to FanHome for sending along for review. Greatly appreciate that. I am Anthony Scott at toyhypeusa.com. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please like and share this video. We would greatly appreciate that as well. Stay tuned for more FanHome coverage. Up next, we are going to be looking at a new Street Fighter box. Thanks again for watching and stay tuned for more coverage.